In this War Master battle report, the Dogs of War and Lizardmen clash at 2,000 points in an objective-based scenario for an upcoming tournament. We set up our battlefield 180 cm by 120 cm in size. We set up our scenery to represent the jungle landscape of Lustria, and the narrative for this game will be that Dutch Schaefer's mercenary band has been deployed to retrieve hostages captured by the local Lizardman tribe. Meanwhile, the Lizardman army, led by Lord Chockybickie, are holding the hostages as bait, hoping to lure more humans into their jungle where they can be hunted. The battlefield features 6 hills which are open ground to all units. Infantry or artillery on a hill can claim defended status if they're higher up than their attackers. There are 4 woods which are dense terrain and can only be entered by infantry. Units inside wood can only see 2 cm, but infantry can claim defended status. There are 2 spawning ponds which count as marshes, so they are dense terrain and can only be entered by infantry, although they do grant defended status. The small river is a shallow water feature. We say that it can be entered by all units but counts as dense terrain. Whilst the road is open ground and grants a command bonus to any unit which remains on the road as it moves, provided it's in column formation. The scenario that we'll be playing today is called Hold the Ground, which is an objective-based scenario. The winner of the battle will be the player that scores the most victory points by the time the 2.5 hour time limit expires. Units that are in control of objectives will score their side additional victory points at the end of the game. The game will also end when one side is forced to withdraw, at which point both sides calculate their victory points to determine the winner. The scenario requires 5 objective markers to be placed on the battlefield, 1 in the exact centre of the board, whilst each player then places 2 more objectives, 1 in their own table half and 1 in the enemy's table half, within terrain features. Both players make a scouting roll to determine their board edges, and then objectives are placed. Each objective must be placed at least 30 cm away from another objective. Once both players have finished placing their objective, the battlefield looks like this. There is 1 objective in the middle of the board. On the Lizardman side there is 1 in a wood, and 1 on a hill by the river. And on the Dogs of War side there's 1 on a hill by the road, and 1 in a wood. Before deploying their armies, both players now pick their strategy cards. Each player picks 3 cards, only one of which may be a terrain card. These cards will give a minor boost to a single piece of terrain, or a unit in combat, or a character. The Dogs of War player places a terrain card on the central wood, turning it into a thicket, whilst the Lizardman player turns their hill into a slippery slope. This game will also make use of the special rule, "The king is dead, long live the king," which means if an enemy's general is removed from play as a casualty, another character can take over the role of general by passing a command test. So now let's review the armies that have taken to the field to fight this battle. The first army are the Dogs of War. This is an infantry-heavy Dogs of War army featuring 4 pikes, 4 crossbows, 2 swordsmen, 2 ogres, 2 marauders, 2 light cavalry, 2 knights, 2 galloper guns and 1 unit of birdmen. For characters there is 1 general, Dutch Schaefer, 1 hero mounted on a griffin with a sword of might, 1 paymaster on paywagon, 1 wizard with a dispel scroll and 1 wizard with a ring of power. The army breakpoint is 11. The Dogs of War won the scouting roll, so their flying units deployed first as scouts, 1 unit of birdmen and the flying hero. Next we look at the Lizardmen. This is a compact but very heavy hitting army featuring 4 skinks, 4 saurus, 2 Kroxigor, 4 Cold One Riders, 1 unit of pterodons, 1 Slan Mage Priest, who is Lord Chockybickie, 2 Saurus heroes both mounted on Carnosaurs, one with the Sword of Might, 3 Skink heroes and 2 Skink shaman, one with the Ring of Magic and one with the Dispel Scroll. The army breakpoint is only 8. On the right flank, 2 units of Kroxigor deploy in line, with Skinks in support. Next to them, 2 units of Saurus supported by 2 units of Skinks deploy in the wood, whilst the characters supporting this right flank are a Skink shaman, a Saurus hero on Carnosaur, and a Skink hero. In the centre sits Lord Choki-Biki, assisted by another Skink hero. On centre left is a brigade of 4 Cold One riders, and they are commanded by a Skink shaman, a Saurus hero on Carnosaur, and another Skink hero. And finally on the left flank are 2 units of Saurus and a unit of Pterodons. With the Lizardman army deployed, its battle line looks like this. The plan is that the heavy infantry on the right flank will advance forward and secure the objectives in dense terrain, whilst the cavalry on the left will sweep all before them and secure the objectives in the open terrain. The Dogs of War army now takes to the field in full. Dutch Schaefer's plan is to move in quickly, secure the hostages, and then survive against whatever the Lizardmen throw at them. On the left flank are 2 units of crossbows supported by swordsmen. In centre left, Dutch Schaefer commands, and he leads a unit of ogres supported by warriors from the Riemann Reenactment Society. In the centre is a block of 4 units of pike, and they have a wizard in support. On the centre right, another unit of ogres and Riemann reenactors deploy, whilst the right flank hill is secured by 2 units of crossbows, 2 Gallopagons and a wizard. On the extreme right are 2 units of light cavalry and 2 units of knights. They are commanded by the Paymaster. Both armies are now fully arrayed for battle, with characters assigned brigades to command and brigades assigned objectives to capture. The Lizardman army is small but powerful and very melee focused, whereas the Dogs of War army is larger and has more tactical variety. Let battle commence! The Lizardmen's first turn goes well, with the heavy infantry brigades on the right flank advancing quickly through the dense terrain. On the left, the Cold One brigade and Pterodons advance more cautiously, whilst the Saurus begin to climb the slippery slope to secure their objective. The Lizardmen characters advance ahead of their units ready for issuing orders next turn, and in the magic phase, the Skinks decide not to cast any spells. The Dogs of War now take their first turn, with the infantry brigade on the left flank securing their first objective inside the wood. In the centre, the pikes make a bold advance up the field, their flanks secured by ogres. Meanwhile on the right, the Gallopagons and accompanying infantry secure another objective on top of a hill, whilst the cavalry begins a sweeping manoeuvre on the far right flank. Characters advance ahead of their units ready for next turn, and in the shooting phase no magic is deployed. In their second turn, the Lizardmen heavy infantry continues its advance up the right flank, securing one objective in the jungle as they do so. On the left, the Saurus infantry on the slippery slope also secure their objective, whilst the Cold Ones and Pterodons continue to advance cautiously towards the objective in the centre of the board. Lord Choki-Biki's plan to lure the humans into a trap is proceeding as he has foreseen. The Skink priests move forwards and cast their spells against the enemy cavalry. 2 units of knights are struck down with Mazdamundi's Revenge and will not be able to charge or pursue in combat next turn. In Dogs of War turn 2, on their left flank the infantry remains within the safety of the woods, along with the hostages. 2 units of pike split off from the main brigade and join a unit of ogres and marauders to close off the open ground between 2 woods. And in the centre the same manoeuvre is repeated with 2 more units of pike and another unit of ogres supported by marauders. They now occupy the centre ground and will contest the central objective. On the right, the cavalry brigade once again moves forward, threatening a charge against the Saurus on the hill. The Birdmen meanwhile have flown all the way behind the enemy army to start imposing command modifiers and cause some confusion with their crossbows. Characters now move forwards and an Empire Wizard casts Weird Enchantment upon a unit of Cold Ones. However, a nearby Skink Shaman reads from his Dispel scroll and the spell is stopped. On the Dogs of War left, the crossbows and a ball of flame from a nearby wizard is sufficient to drive back the Kroxigor, although it doesn't fully break up the brigade. The crossbows of the Birdmen are more successful, however, and they drive forwards a unit of Cold One riders and confuse them in the process. With both sides now having played 2 turns, the battle lines now look like this. At the start of Lizardman turn 3, the Dogs of War player plays a strategy card on a Skink hero character. This hero is now indecisive, so will blunder an order on any roll of a double this turn. Eager for action, a unit of Kroxigor and a unit of Saurus, both supported by Skinks, moves forward into charge range of the enemy, but the order to charge fails. The Saurus hero then urges his monstrous mount forwards to confront the enemy hero mounted on a griffin, who is represented by Asanil the Dragon Lord. A challenge is set down.
You like loose quads.
But Asanil is not impressed.
One ugly mother.
Elsewhere, the Cold One riders reshuffle their lines to undo the damage done by the Birdmen, whilst 2 successful orders on the Pterodons see them swoop behind the Birdmen and then charge them in the rear. Caught by surprise, the Birdmen are now in a very vulnerable position. Once again, the spells of the Skink Shaman target the Knights, but only 1 unit succumbs to Mazdamundi's revenge. In combat, over 2 rounds, the charging Pterodons take out 2 stands of Birdmen, who fail to take a stand in return. At the end of their 3rd turn, the Lizardman army has claimed First Blood, and the battle lines look like this. With the Lizardman offensive stalling, can the Dogs of War turn the tables on their attackers? In turn 3, Dutch Schaefer decrees that the time has come to strike and strike hard. Successful orders see the Ogres and Marauders charging into the Kroxigor, whilst the Pikemen charge the Saurus. In the centre, 2 units of Pike bravely, although somewhat foolishly, charge into the Cold One riders. A unit of crossbowmen supported by swordsmen makes a corner-to-corner pinned contact charge out of the woods, bringing their support into the fight against the Kroxigor. Asanil joins this fight by attaching himself to the unit of Ogres, whilst the Saurus hero on Carnosaur joins the unit of Saurus. Back in the centre, the remaining Ogres and Marauders enter the swamp and take up defensive positions, whilst the Cavalry Brigade continues its sweeping flank manoeuvre, setting up a charge into the Saurus next turn. Wizards now begin to sling their spells into combat, with a weird enchantment affecting the Saurus and the attached Carnosaur. The Carnosaur loses its ability to cause terror, whilst the Saurus fighting the Pikemen now count their enemies as terrifying. Another weird enchantment is cast upon the Cold One riders fighting the Pikemen in the centre. Both players now play strategy cards upon their units in combat, with the Ogres and Kroxigor drinking from potions of strength. The Kroxigor are more than a match for Ogres, but hopefully Asanil's presence in that combat will tip the balance in the favour of the Dogs of War. The ensuing combat is brutal and bloody, with heavy casualties being inflicted on both sides. However, thanks to the force multipliers provided by the Dogs of War magic and Asanil the Dragon Lord, it is the Dogs of War units that win combat, assisted no doubt by the mass of supporting troops. The Saurus take particularly heavy casualties in the first round of combat, and they are wiped out, along with their accompanying hero and Carnosaur. the lizard men retreat, and the Dogs of War units can advance into the skinks, causing heavy casualties amongst them. Once the dust settles, both skink units are reduced to a single stand, as are the Kroxigor. However, the Dogs of War have suffered their own casualties, with the ogres being reduced to a single stand, along with a unit of pikes. Asanil wisely urges the ogres to fall back in good order, and he leaves combat. Meanwhile, the marauders and one unit of wounded pike continue the fight against the skinks and Kroxigor. They lock the enemy in place, and combat will continue next turn. Elsewhere, the charging pikemen perform admirably against the Cold One riders, with both sides inflicting 6 hits upon each other. The pikemen units lose a stand each, but also one stand of Cold One riders is brought down. The combat is a draw, so both sides fall back in good order, with one unit of wounded Cold One riders manoeuvring out to their right, hoping to clean up some wounded Dogs of War units from the other combat. Meanwhile, at the rear of the lines, the Pterodons have made short work of the last surviving Birdman. The lizard men start turn 4, with a second unit of Kroxigor making an initiative charge into corner contact with the pinned stand of marauders. The Pterodons are then ordered to make a long-range charge into a single remaining stand of pikemen. The Cold One riders, hexed with a weird enchantment, do decide to charge back into combat with the pikes, whilst the remaining 2 units from the brigade head towards the light cavalry, but the order for them to charge fails. The unit of Cold Ones with 2 stands remaining attempts a flank charge against the pikes engaged against skinks, but again the order to charge fails. Meanwhile, in the centre, a unit of Saurus burst from the rainforest and charge into the flank of the pikemen engaged with Cold Ones.
The jungle that came alive and took him.
The beleaguered pikemen are quickly cut down by the Saurus and Cold Ones, whilst Dutch Schaefer looks on incredulously.
You saying that Blaine and Hawkins were killed by a lizard?
The Saurus then fall back in good order to rejoin the skinks in the jungle, whilst the cavalry continues to lurk near the objective. Elsewhere, the Pterodons quickly kill the lone stand of pikemen that they caught unawares, and then fall back behind the rear of the marauders who are engaged with the Kroxigor. By cutting off their retreat, the Pterodons will ensure that some marauder stands will be destroyed if they lose combat. In the ensuing combat, both stands of skinks are wiped out and the marauders lose a stand themselves. However, the Kroxigor roll poorly and fail to win the combat. The engagement ends in a draw, and the Kroxigor fall backwards, whilst the marauders perform an about-face to see the Pterodons. The pikemen slide sideways to also bring the Pterodons into charge range. With the Lizardman offensive faltering, can they now stop the Dogs of War? In Dogs of War turn 4, the 2 units of light cavalry near to the Cold One cavalry use their initiative to evade, and as they are light cavalry, they can evade in any direction. They split off from the heavy cavalry and evade to both flanks. This then gives the heavy cavalry line of sight to the Cold Ones, and they use their initiative to charge. They are joined by the ogres and supporting marauders who charge out of the swamp into corner-to-corner contact with the pinned Cold Ones. The single remaining stand of ogres on the left flank use their initiative to evade away from the Pterodons and take refuge in the jungle alongside the hostages. The surviving marauders and pikemen stands use their initiative to charge into the rear and flanks of the Pterodons. Meanwhile, the crossbows and their supporting swordsmen are ordered to join the ogres in the jungle. On the right flank, 2 units of galloper guns and 1 unit of crossbowmen are ordered down off the hill to move forwards and bring lizardmen units into cannon range.
Come on in. Old Painless is waiting.
A single unit of crossbowmen now holds the hill and the hostages. Characters are moved, with the hero on dragon and paymaster on paywagon joining the fray against the Cold Ones on the hill. Wizards move across the battlefield to add their spells to the ensuing combat and throw fireballs at unengaged targets where possible. The shooting phase is decisive, with fire from the cannon, crossbows and a wizard removing the remaining 2 stands of the Cold One units near the central objective. In the combat phase, the Marauders and Pikemen quickly overcome the Pterodons, although the Marauders do lose a stand in the process. The survivors then fall back where they can to try and escape from the Kroxigor next turn. However, when we check our watches, we realise that the time limit for the battle is almost up, therefore the clash between cavalry on the hill will be the final combat of the game. For this combat, the Dragon Rider has joined a unit of knights, whilst the Paymaster has joined the ogres. Caught up in the charge, a Saurus hero on Carnosaur with the Sword of Might joins a unit of Cold Ones. But a wizard has cast Weird Enchantment on that unit of Cold Ones, so the Carnosaur's terror is nullified. The dice are rolled and the Lizardmen's luck has now evaporated, as the Cold Ones take horrendous casualties while failing to inflict even a stand's worth of damage on the enemy knights. The Cold One Riders lose combat significantly and must retreat into the Saurus behind them. Rather than make way with the Saurus and risk losing their objective, they decide to hold fast, and the Cold Ones are destroyed as they now have nowhere to retreat. Meanwhile, the wounded Knights and Ogres elect not to advance into the defended Saurus, so we call the game there. And both players now calculate their victory points. At the end of the game, both players have captured 2 objectives in their own table half, which grants them an additional 200 victory points. The central objective, meanwhile, remains unclaimed. The Dogs of War casualties amount to 1 unit of Birdmen, 3 units of Pikes, half a unit of Ogres and half a unit of Marauders. These are worth 320 points to the Lizardmen. The Lizardmen casualties consist of 3 units of Cold One Riders, 1 unit of Pterodons, 2 units of Skinks, 1 unit of Saurus and half a unit of Kroxigor, plus the 2 Saurus heroes on Carnosaurs. These casualties weigh up to a whopping 950 victory points. So with the addition of an extra 200 points each for the objectives captured, the Dogs of War have won this game with 1,150 victory points to the Lizardmen's 520. The key to victory was Dutch Schaefer's ability to swing both the key combat engagements in his favour through the use of terror-causing characters and the Weird Enchantment spell to strip terror from his enemies. So on this occasion, Dutch Schaefer has seen off the reptilian predators, and Lord Chocky Bicky retires to his temple plaza to plot his revenge.